Hello there, my name is Sam Cleasby and welcome to the Everything You Want to Know About Parastomal Hernias webinar. I have an ileostomy and I have had several parastomal hernias and I write and blog about that. And I'm your host today, and joining me we have Bob, who's a fellow ostomy and parastomal hernia patient. We have Emma, who's a stoma nurse. Joe is a Pilates and core strength trainer, and Sue is our product specialist. I think we're going to have a great hour. I'm really looking forward to it as a patient and also just to share this information. So over the next hour, we're going to run through different topics all around parastomal hernias. First of all, we're going to talk about a bit of an overview of what is a parastomal hernia. And then we're going to talk about reducing the risk of developing parastomal hernias, managing parastomal hernias, and we are going to have some questions and answers at the end. You can submit your questions to us using the question and answer box, and we are going to try and answer as many as we can. Any questions that we don't answer, we will try and answer and get shared later on. So welcome to the event. I can see we've got a lot of people watching. This is fantastic. So first of all, I wanted to talk about what is a parastomal hernia, because I had never heard the word before I actually got one. So Emma, could you give us a bit of a explanation of what a parastomal hernia is?
Yeah, so the clinical definition of a parastomal hernia can be described as a bulge or swelling just around or under the stoma. How it happens is that the surgeon, when they're making the opening through the abdominal wall to pull through your bowel, which creates the stoma, that opening then creates a weakness in your bowel wall. And that opening may enlarge, allowing the intestines or fat or other abdominal tissue to push through and cause that bulge around the stoma. Hernias can lie within layers of abdominal wall or can be underneath the skin. Unfortunately, some people are just prone to getting hernias and parastomal hernias. They're born with a genetic inability to produce the collagen to repair or strengthen that muscle. And they tend to have a history of developing hernias, which is quite unfortunate. A parastomal hernia really needs to be diagnosed by having a CT scan, and that can be done by after you've seen a stoma care nurse or your GP to have that arranged.
And the parastomal hernia, it's different to say like an incisional hernia or other sort of hernias that we might have heard of before. It's specifically behind the stoma.
Yeah. So it's just that bulge of intestines that's pushing behind through that abdominal wall that's causing that hernia to happen.
Bob, I know that you have had parastomal hernias before. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, sure. I was diagnosed initially with diverticulitis, which people over 50, which I am, generally have. Unfortunately, I then got lots of infections, which then meant I had to have a colon resection. When I came home after several surgeries from that, in my recovery was when I noticed I had a bulge. Initially, I just thought that was part of the healing, it was swelling, etc. And it was through a support group that I was given the hint that it might be a parastomal hernia. So that was my first one. That was January last year. I had that through, I carried that actually through till when I had my first attempt at reversal in September, where it got repaired. Unfortunately, shortly after that, I got another one. And that was repaired in February this year. But unfortunately for me, I got another one in May. So I'm on my third one now.
Not third time lucky then, is it, Bob? I'm quite similar in that I've had quite a few parastomal hernias, and if I'm honest, I had no idea what they were before I actually got one. And I know we've talked before, Bob, about how at first you think, oh, is it just swollen because it looks a bit different, it feels a bit different, and until another patient told me, yeah, I think that's a parastomal hernia, I think you need to see somebody. And I went and spoke to my stoma nurse about it. And again, I've had multiple surgeries. I've had my stoma moved to different sides. It's swapped from left to right to back to left again. And it's it's been really difficult. Is it quite common, Emma, that it can be a recurrent thing?
Yeah, it is very common to be recurrent. I mean, the actual figures of getting a parastomal hernia are very unknown. If you read lots of articles, you'll get different percentages, but it is a very common occurrence. It's mostly likely to develop in the first year of having a stoma formation, but you can't always prevent it. Like I say, people tend to be quite prone to them. So no matter what they do, they might get one, unfortunately. Yeah, so that's it. The figures are unknown as to how many, but it is very common, unfortunately.
Do you think that it's something that people are warned about before it happened as a risk of surgery? Because I have to say, I either wasn't told about it or I don't remember, because it was quite a traumatic time going through surgeries. So I don't really recall anyone ever really telling me about it before.
Yeah, generally my experience, our stoma nurse team do tell people about the possibility of developing a hernia pre-op and post-op, but it's really hard to try and develop when it is a good time to tell a patient, because patient experiences are very different. They might have been emergency, or they might be elective where you might have that time. So it is down to us to decide when is the best time to have those discussions. And also another thing is, are you going to retain that information once we do tell you, compared to everything else you're told? So it might have been that you were told, but that information just gone completely. So I think for something like this, it is something that needs to be told often during pre-op, post-op, and ongoing, because it's the sort of thing that tends to be forgotten.
Yeah. I remember being told about not lifting up anything heavier than a kettle. And that was one thing that stuck in my mind. And when I went home, there was definitely times where my kids were going, Mom, is that heavier than a kettle? If it is, you shouldn't be picking it up. Bob, did you get much sort of advice before you developed a parastomal hernia?
I think I, very much like you said, is I may have been given bits and pieces by the stoma clinic. I don't really remember very much apart from the kettle bit. I was given some more in hospital by the physios and the stoma nurses, where they showed me how to get up from the bed, so I'm not using my core, using my arms. I think for me it was very difficult in real life figuring out what I could and couldn't do. So it's quite straightforward. Don't pick a kettle up. Not so straightforward. Should I polish the table, or should I, get a pan out, or those kind of movements. So I'm sure I was told, but I did, like you say, it doesn't really sink in, because there's so much else going on at the time. And of course, when you're in hospital, I know I particularly, and I'm sure everybody can understand this, I was on quite a lot of medication. So a lot of stuff doesn't quite gel.
Definitely. Emma, what's the clinical advice around prevention of a parastomal hernia? We know prevention's better than cure. What's that clinical advice?
Well, it is a case of preventing any form of heavy lifting, which, as you just said, is hard to say. Can I lift a kettle? Can I bend over? It's just anything that involves using the abdominal muscles, which might, cause that weakness and that hernia to produce. So, you know, you can strengthen that abdominal wall by doing some light abdominal exercises, which I'm sure Joe can talk about. There's also wearing of the hernia support belt that will just give that support around your abdominal wall while you are doing anything that is exercise or gardening or lifting. There's also, you know, if you're going to cough and sneeze, that puts a lot of pressure on your abdominal wall. So it's hard to know when you're going to cough and sneeze, but, you know, have a pillow around you initially so that you could cover that pillow on your abdomen, just to lighten up that pressure of a cough and sneeze. You want to try and prevent any form of constipation, so drink plenty of fluids, because you don't want your bowel straining to produce that output. So drink plenty of fluids, keep your output very soft. Avoid gaining any weight if you can, and also try to, if you are on the heavy side, just try and lose a little bit weight, because you are more prone to a hernia if you're on the heavier side. Joe, could you talk about any of the exercises?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Jo and I teach Pilates, and actually if you go to the CliniMed YouTube channel, the class that I actually devised is up there now. I hope that you enjoy it. When I devised it and obviously researched it a lot, the one thing, even in my normal classes, we talk about core and we need core strength, but I think sometimes there's too much on the emphasis of core. So I looked above and below that kinetic chain, so that pre-operation and post-operation you can be in the best health that you can be in and as strong as you can be in. So for instance, in the video, I do a lot of arm work, because as Bob rightly said, you know, when you first have the operation, your core is, you know, you're cutting your core, so you're not going to have that core strength and you need to get up. So we look at tricep strength to push yourself out of a bed, you know, rolling over. I'm a great one for working the bottom below that kinetic chain of the abdominals, because you need that glute strength as well. If your seat is strong, then your core can be strong. And it usually is the most innocuous things that will put pressure on your core. So because when you're thinking about it, you'll be very mindful of it. You need to have that core strength. But when you are reaching to, you know, pick a suitcase up, or you're reaching, you know, in gardening is a great one. When you're gardening, you know, your core strong, so that your muscles within this video will become stronger and stronger, so you won't have to think about it as much. And sometimes, because when you think about it, you become rigid in your movement, and that in itself can cause problems. So, you know, we just want to lead, you know, the normal life and be as strong as we can be. So there's all the exercises on there. The exercise I haven't chosen are ones that will cause intra-abdominal cavity pressure. So, you know, no curl ups, anything like that. It's all just, like I said, walking past a mirror and, you know, shop window, and you're like, oh my God, and you suck your tummy in. Things like that, you know, that we can do all the time. You know, we can all be sat here, you know, pulling our navel to our spine. That's cool. So, you know, the simple.
We've all just done that now, haven't we?
I just looked up as well. You know, because again, you know, if we're, you know, at the minute we're all working from home, we're on laptops, we're like that, our abdominals are squished out, you know, so it's just, again, nice, even opening out the chest will lengthen the core. That will help as well, and not put that pressure to create those hernias. So
Bob and I both mentioned that the kettle, not lifting anything heavier than a kettle, but then also it's things like the movement of hoovering. So I've got a very lightweight hoover, but it's the twisting that really,
rotation.
Yeah, that can be quite difficult.
Yeah, and rotation anyway is, you know, it's, again, you know, you need to be very mindful. So the exercises, you need to work rotation, because our spine and our body's work in every way. You know, like I said, we don't want to be mirror signal maneuver, but so when I put a couple of rotation ones on there, so we're just mindful of it. The more that we practice it, then the better we get and the stronger we get. You know, it's tiny steps and it's baby steps, and it's also a mind thing that we get confident in our movements, especially, you know, when we have had our operations. We want that confidence that we are doing the correct things. So
I think we're all very careful in that first 6, 8, 10 weeks after surgery. But I think in my mind, I was thinking, they said, you know, your recovery is about 6, 8 weeks. So for those 6 to 8 weeks, I didn't lift anything heavy in the kettle. I didn't do any of those things. But that can't be for the rest of our lives, surely, because we see people who've got a stoma who do weightlifting, who do wonderful things. Yeah. So is it just a case of us building strength up slowly?
Yeah, it's like anything, you know, pre or post operation. You know, an exercise program is to get you stronger, and if you know, do it regularly, you will get stronger. So it's just a case of sort of like putting it into your daily lifestyle. And you know, when I used to work in a physio clinic, I'll give people, you know, advice, and they'd come in the next week and they'd be like, you know, I'd be like, have you done your exercises? And they're like, yeah. And I'd be like, show me, and they couldn't show me, and they're not getting any better. So you've got to put the work in. It's like if you want to improve on anything, you have to put the work in. But hopefully it's got to be enjoyable at the same time, so you want to do the work. Hopefully that video will help you and it will be enjoyable.
It's a great video. It's a really great video, I think, because it starts quite basic. So it is those little things that we can all do that's not too terrifying. You know, a lot of us don't want to run straight into a heavy duty class. We need little things to build our confidence at first. So what about products for prevention?
Yes, thank you, Sam. There's basically 2 different product ranges on the market specifically designed to help resolve the issues that parastomal hernias can create for patients. One has an elastic adhesive base plate, and it's star-shaped, which means it fits curved areas. Another alternative is a one-piece pouch that has a soft moldable adhesive base plate. That can be fully inverted, which is great if you've got a rounded hernia. It will fit to that shape, but it's also great in as much as it molds to all body contours and curves. So if you have a parastomal hernia that isn't symmetrical on both sides, or has skin creases or contours and skin folds around it, it can actually totally invert, and it can also mold into those creases at the same time. It has the added advantage as well of containing medical grade Manuka honey, and this may be able to promote healthy skin around the stoma, and that can be a problem for people with parastomal hernias, because obviously the parastomal hernia can cause the pouch to pucker and leak unless you're using a sort of designed pouch, and therefore being able to perhaps promote healthy skin is another advantage. For patients who perhaps are thinking of doing some exercises or already exercising and are worried about leakages because of their hernia, there's also the addition of something called flange extenders. These are also available with the medical grade Manuka honey in, or you can get ones that are even more tailored to exercise, and that just gives peace of mind and extends the area of adhesion around the stoma, which, as I say, can give people peace of mind when they're exercising.
Those are pouches for if you've got a parastomal hernia. What about things like belts or support garments? Can you talk about that a little bit, Emma?
Yeah, so wearing a support garment can relieve discomfort that a hernia causes. That's only if it's been put on right. Bob, do you use a hernia support belt?
I have. I've got 2. I've got one that goes over the bag, and I've got one with a hole in it to put the bag through. The reason I got one with a hole, I know I was told they're not as strong, but where my first hernia had become quite big, it literally was about 6 inches out of my belly. Going to work, and you know, it was just becoming really painful, and also covering the bag was putting a lot of pressure on. So I got one with a hole in to try and release that pressure on the bag, because I was finding I was having leaks because of the bag being pushed so hard. I'll be honest with you, I do find over a period of time that the belt actually is quite uncomfortable, because it can become painful pushing the hernia in. But you know, it's some guidance maybe would be helpful.
Okay, can I just ask how you put that belt on? Do you pull it on standing up or do you pull it on laying down?
When I was measured up standing up, so that's how I've always put it on, standing up.
Okay, you should have been measured laying down, and you should also put your belt on laying down. The reason being is when you lay down, that's when everything, it just allows your abdomen to reduce and settle back into its original state, if you like. So that's how you should put your belt on. Now, if you can't put your belt on all the way, you can pull it on a little bit and then stand up and walk it across with the Velcro. But the ideal thing is to pull it on laying down, because that is the way your body just rests in its original state, and that reduces the hernia slightly as well. Because if you think when you're laying down, gravity puts everything back. So it reduces. So then when you pull it on laying down and you stand up, it should keep that hernia reduced slightly, and that should make it more comfortable. Does that make sense? Yeah.
It does. It makes perfect, because when I'm lying down, that's when I'm most comfortable, because of course it goes in.
Yeah.
And it's when I stand back up that it's painful. Yeah, absolutely. So that's good advice. Thank you.
Okay.
Should we be getting properly fitted and measured for a support garment? Because I know you can get things online. Should this be something that your stoma nurse would be measuring you for?
There are a lot of companies that will come to you and measure you specifically and do a bespoke garment, but they should be doing having you lay down when they measure you. If you're somebody that's in a wheelchair, you should be measured within that wheelchair, because that's where you're sitting most of the day. But you know, yeah, they should measure you laying down, and they can come to you and do that.
We've already got parastomal hernias. When you're already in that position, I found that it affected every part of my life. Bob, can you talk a bit about your experience of living with a parastomal hernia? Like, has it affected work or relationships or your hobbies?
Sure. So I think for me, I've never had any body conscious issues at all. I've always just been me. What I did find for the first time was when it appeared, that the hernia was going to work, for example. You know, I wear a shirt to work. You can't hide it. It's there, and it's you know, it really affected my confidence, if I'm very honest about it, because as much as I've got a really good support network of family and friends, and the company I work for has been absolutely amazing looking after me, people do look, and no matter how nice they are, the eyes will drop down because you've got a big bump on your belly. And especially out, you know, I try and still go to the pub, and I still try to go out and do stuff, and you're aware that people are staring, and so that really undermines confidence a bit. The other thing for me was clothing, and you know, again, that's not something I'd ever really thought about very much. I'm very much, you know, I'll just grab something in the shop and wear it kind of idea, and I was suddenly having a situation where every time I got dressed, I was going for things that I was trying to hide the hernia, so that people wouldn't stare. So psychological, you know, there's a whole issue going on. And of course, you know, I'm married, and you know, it's a body confidence thing, you know, with your half as well. It's quite tricky. I know for many months after I came out of hospital last year, you know, I always kept pajamas on, you know, no matter what, because it was all about, I didn't want that to be seen, you know, it was not pleasant. So yeah, there's all kinds of aspects to that are quite difficult to get around.
I really appreciate you speaking so honestly about it, Bob, because I have a very similar experience where I'm quite a confident person, I'm quite an outgoing person, and having the bag actually didn't bother me at all. Yeah, people sometimes looked if you were at the swimming pool or on the beach, but generally you can't tell if you've got a bag. But when you have quite a large lump on one side of you, like you say, people's eyes are drawn to it, and it's easy to feel quite isolated, I think, because we don't talk about these things, do we? Which is why I think why it's fantastic that we're talking about it today. And I've very much had the same feelings of, you know, it looks quite painful. So people look at you and go, ooh, that looks sore. And it also looks, and I hate the word normal, but it doesn't look normal because just one side of you is really sticking out. I'm glad to hear that your work was really supportive. With hobbies and things, how did it affect you at all? I found it that it was quite difficult to manage the pain and not knowing when I would be in pain, when I wouldn't be in pain, and sometimes even wearing the support garments, I still felt it did still feel very painful. And I'd try and plan things in at the earlier part of the day because I tended to be worse by the end of the day. It seemed to be bigger by then. Did you have any sort of experiences like that?
Yeah, you do tend to change the way you do your day, very much so. So I love cooking, and what I find is on certain days, I can't stand in the kitchen for too long because it starts just really hurting. So then I have to adjust what I'm cooking. And going back to the exercise side of it, one of the things that I was doing initially to try and get my strength back up was walking. But I would find that sometimes I'll get, you know, a couple of streets away and it would be like cramp. And so I'd have to come up because it was just too painful that day. Painkillers are great, but when you're trying to work and have a normal day, you can't just throw loads of painkillers down you all the time. So yeah, it does affect, and it is tricky to try and manage everything. And like you say, I do sometimes change my day around a little bit depending on how it's behaving.
So once you've been diagnosed with a parastomal hernia, should we be changing the products that we use? Because I think a lot of people, you get the bag that you're given in hospital and you think, right, that's it, that's me sorted for as long as I've got my stoma. Is that a point where we should be looking at using a different bag?
That's a really important point, Sam, in as much as the patch that you come out of hospital with, which is the one that you get used to, has been specifically recommended to you for the type of stoma you have, the shape of your abdomen, so that you get the best fit. Obviously, when things change, and that could be weight gain, weight lost, and in this instance, with the development of a parastomal hernia, it's really important to review the product you're using, because by switching to a product that's specifically designed to help resolve those issues with parastomal hernia, you're then going to obviously resolve the problems maybe of skin soreness, leakage, discomfort, and ultimately improve your quality of life. So I think that's probably one of the first things, rather than putting up with whatever issues the pouch that you're having at the moment, is to actually think about, well, now that I have a parastomal hernia, what sort of product should I be using instead? Yes.
And if we're completely lost, because a lot of people don't even know that there's more than one type of bag, what's the best first step for somebody who thinks, I think I need a new bag, I'm not sure, is it to go to somebody like Emma?
Yes, I mean, the first port of call really, if you have a stoma care nurse, is to speak with your stoma care nurse. And I think perhaps as well getting an idea of that there are sort of bespoke parastomal hernia solution products out there to actually be able to go along and say, I'd like to try a pouch that's designed for a parastomal hernia. And if you are having skin issues, then by choosing one that's got medical grade manuka honey, may well promote healthy skin around your stoma too, if you've been suffering with leakage or soreness. But yes, probably, I don't know, Emma, would you say that's the direction to go to the stoma nurse first?
Emma, would you agree that is for the best first port of call is stoma nurse?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, just so that we can reassess what is happening with your current pouch, and is there anything that's better suited to manage any problems that you might be having now you've developed a hernia. The other thing that can happen with developing a hernia is that your sizing might need changing, because as your hernia grows, it stretches your skin, but that also stretches the stoma itself. So, you know, you might just need a resize every now and again to have that checked. So as well as maybe needing a pouch that suits a hernia, you might need that size changing, whether that might mean another pouch, because pouch you might currently have might not be available in a higher size. So you do have to.
The size of the hole that we put into the.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is, Sam, that's taken into account with a parastomal hernia pouch, where the pouches that invert specifically, is the fact that they do come in larger cutting plateaus and have more surface area to accommodate that larger stoma.
I speak to a lot of people with stomas. It's what I do every day. It's fantastic. I love it. And one of the things that a lot of people say to me, and specifically I would say older people, is, oh, I don't want to bother my stoma nurse. I don't really have any problems. We need to stop that, don't we? This is what you're here for, Emma.
Oh, definitely. Any question or any concern, any element relating to your stoma, you need to pick up the phone and you need to bother your stoma nurse. There's no point carrying on with a problem or an issue or concern that you have. You know, it's going to affect your day-to-day life. And if you can just pick up the phone, that is what we're here for, is to help you. If you don't pick up the phone, there's no point us being a stoma nurse. So, you know, that is what we're here for. That's our job. So, yeah, definitely, please contact us. There is ways of getting other information as well as through your stoma nurse. So there are the stoma associations as well. So you could try this colostomy association, ileostomy association, urostomy association, have loads of information and leaflets and advice as well. And also your home delivery service. So if you're stuck, call your home delivery service. If you haven't seen or you don't know who your stoma nurse is, just look on the internet and look up your local hospital and pick up the phone and ask to be put through to the stoma department. That can be done really easily. And any stoma department, if you live within that area, they will help you.
Okay. Jo, what about exercise once you've already got the hernia? So it's there, it can be quite painful, it's quite scary to start exercising. I was really, really lucky in that I found a personal trainer who had been through the same surgeries that I had, but that's not something that's accessible to everyone. I know you've got the great video. The video's out there. Anyone watching, you can go and find that on the Clinimed website. Do you have any other sort of information or support for people around exercise once they've already got that hernia?
Well, if they are going to a class or, like you say, a personal trainer, it's finding somebody that you're comfortable with and that you have confidence in, full stop. And you'll know pretty much straight away. So if you're post-operative and you go into a class and you've made, you've got the confidence to go into a class again, and then you don't feel confident with that instructor, don't go again. Just to find somebody that you're confident with. And also there is a lot of information out there. And like I said at the start, it's baby steps. And if you go to a class or you're with a trainer, I always say, listen to your own body. You said, Bob, you went for a walk and then, halfway you thought, I can't do this. That's fine. It's some days we're better than other days. So just read your body on that given day. And if you decide, do you know what, it's not working for me today, don't do it. So, and tomorrow's another day and you might feel brilliant and you might feel stronger and then you can do it. So it's just getting confidence within yourself and knowing your body. You know, it's reading your body, you know, and and again, just not putting pressure, and you'll know if something you're doing doesn't feel quite right, it's probably not right. So just don't do it, strip it back, and then start again, you know, from the basics. And you know, and that's why you know, at the minute Zoom's quite good, because I was just saying, I think actually I was saying to you, Sam, that you know, sometimes when you go to a class, you know, you're looking around and you're like, well, they're doing that. And even, you know, some of my clients, if I say don't do this because of this, you know, they're thinking, well, she's doing that, I'm doing it. And I'll be like, oh my God, I've just told her not to do it. So, you know, Zoom's quite good, and internet stuff's quite good, because you can just do it, you know, on your own, and you're not competing with anyone, or, you know, not that anyone anyway within a class shouldn't even, you know, be competing. You know, we're all concerned, we all work to our own level. So it's just getting confidence if you're going to a class. And also, like you said, Sam, you know, letting the instructor know, because you said that sometimes, you know, people don't because maybe of embarrassment, but you know, don't be.
And there's sort of an idea about people who do Pilates, who they're all going to be already very thin and fit and flexible, but it is for everyone, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh my God, absolutely, yeah. So again, that's sort of like being stereotypical, and yeah, it's for everyone. No, it's for everyone. And like I said, it's down to the instructor to make everyone is inclusive, no matter what. So yeah, and like I said, you know, you might have to start off from the basics, but it's with any exercise. If you went to a step class, if you went running, you know, you have to do a walk before you can run. You have to do the basics before you can, you know, go on to the high end. But sometimes, you know, looking at the high end, people look at that and that's what they think it's about. No, it's all about, you know, starting slow, getting the confidence, getting stronger, and then you can fly.
Fantastic. It's time for some questions. We have had a few questions through, and we're going to try and get through as many as we can. Any questions that are not answered will be answered and published and shared with you, with the audience at a later date. And if you have got any questions now, you can type them into the questions box somewhere. I'm going to point, we will try to get through as many as we can. So our first question through is, what are the options and best methods for hernia repair, and what should I do after hernia repair to avoid developing another one? Can we ask you, Emma, so is it always a surgical option?
The surgical option depends on yourself and your surgeon, really. You need to have that discussion with your surgeon to see if they're prepared to do that surgery. I'm sure Bob has some experience with that. So yeah, it needs to be discussed with your surgeon and just see what they say, really, as to whether that's a step that they can go down. Bob, do you have any experience with those conversations?
Yeah, very much so, Emma. So the first hernia I had, after discussing it with my consultant, we decided to try and leave it because putting meshing was going to create problems trying to do a reversal, for example. We did in the end, but the last hernia repair I had in February, we used an organic material. The reason being that we're hoping again next year to try reversal, so the organic material will actually dissolve into my belly, and so won't create a problem having to get through it in the next operation. So I've had both normal meshing and organic, but it's always been in discussion with my consultant. I've got a fabulous consultant and the nurses, and they help me through all the decision making.
I'm the same. I've had several repairs, and I've had both the biological mesh and the one. So my latest surgery was in February this year. It was a big surgery. It ended up being an abdominal reconstruction, and that's a synthetic mesh. And I think sometimes as a patient, you hear all these words and you don't really know what it means. Like in my head, I see what I think is in there, but it's probably not right. The second part of the question was, what should I do after hernia repair to avoid developing another one. Is that just sometimes it just doesn't work? Because I think I've felt like I've had several hernias, I've had the surgeries, I feel like I've tried to do everything they told me to do. I stopped smoking, I did all of the post-op exercises, I didn't lift anything heavier than a kettle, I was so careful, and then it developed again, and it's easy to feel as a patient, well, this is my fault, I've done something wrong here.
Yeah, you're right, and we mentioned it before. I mean, it's not your fault. People are just prone to getting them, unfortunately, to do with the elasticity in the abdomen. So yeah, it just happens, and the surgeons can carry on doing a repair, and you might just get one again, and you can do everything right, but it just might happen. So I'm sorry.
The next question is, I have a hernia and I use a support belt. I'd love to exercise, but my pouch bursts when I move too much. Do you have any advice on how I can exercise again? Can eating different foods also help prevent my pouch bursting? I definitely have had this. I have a support belt, but I sometimes feel that because it's pressing everything back into my abdomen, it also squashes the pouch, which means that the output has nowhere to go. And so all of a sudden you realise that the pouch has burst off and you've got poo everywhere. Have you got any advice around using a support belt and sort of managing how that affects pouches?
I mean, you can look at maybe different types of pouches to see if there's anything more suitable. Also the flange extenders, which will extend that, that wear, the amount of hydrocolloids that's around the stoma, so that might help. All I can suggest is probably emptying it or changing it before you start that exercise. There's no form of, changing your diet won't really help at all. I mean, there are foods that cause more wind, so, to stop your bag from blowing up, but there isn't anything you can do about changing your diet. You just need to carry on eating your normal, regular, healthy diet. So all I can probably suggest is maybe looking at a different pouch, using flange extenders and emptying and changing your pouch before you carry out that exercise.
I think it takes a certain level of confidence as well. It's easy to say, oh, don't be embarrassed to have to go and empty your bag when you're in the gym. Don't be embarrassed if it's suddenly on show. It's easy to say that. It's not so easy to actually live that life of knowing that people are looking at you and sometimes maybe thinking, oh, is that dirty? Is it unhygienic? So it's hard to develop the confidence to get to that point to go, oh no, it's fine, I'll deal with it. Because I've had my stoma 7 years now, and I had a leak this week, and I'll tell you, it's as devastating as the first one, because I'm a grown woman, and all of a sudden you're dealing with having, feces on your body. It is embarrassing, and it is hard to live with. And I think it's important that we're quite honest here, especially myself and Bob. We're here, we understand it, we're living it. That it's easy to read these things and say, oh, just do it. And it's not always so easy to have that confidence to do that. Would you agree, Bob?
Yes, very much. Talking to people, there's a very limited amount of people I would talk to, for example, about issues. There's some great support groups out there which I've gotten into, and they've helped me enormously. They were the people initially who pointed me in the direction that I may have a hernia, for example. But also just being able to share experience as well, so you don't feel quite so isolated about stuff. Very much like the situation you said you had the other day, I had the other night in bed, that I woke up at 4 AM in quite a lot of pain and realised that a part of the seal had given. And so in the middle of the night, I'm having to deal with a situation from bed, as it were.
Yeah.
So it's really it can be quite difficult to ask for help in certain situations.
I don't know is that someone's phone? No,
Apologies, that was my
okay.
my apology. I'm just
No
going to switch off in case I ring again.
The next question is, it's quite similar actually. I have a hernia and I've been having problems with my pouch. It keeps popping off. Do you know of any pouches that may be better for the hernia? I already use flange extenders to try and add more support. Sue, could you help with that one?
I think probably, Sam, what we were saying before, is to actually look at using a specifically designed pouch for parastomal hernia, because as we said before, hernias are different sizes, your abdomen's changed shape. The pouch you've been using for some time, maybe many years, may be totally unsuitable. And the same going back to what we were saying with the hernia support and exercise, it might just be that the pouch that's underneath that hernia support garment isn't suitable to cope with the parastomal hernia and exercise, and that's why it comes off. So I think, yes, the first thing would be to ask your stoma nurse that you're aware there are pouches specifically designed for parastomal hernias, and certainly if you've got a hernia, having one that totally inverts or can actually conform to all the different sort of curves and contours around the parastomal hernia may well be the answer to the problem.
I would say as a patient as well that you shouldn't be leaking all the time. If you are leaking all the time, something isn't right. We all do have sometimes a leak happens and you don't really know why it's happened, or sometimes you do know why it's happened. But Emma, that's right, isn't it? If somebody's leaking every single day, something's not quite right there. So you need some support.
You shouldn't have to live with that at all. Any problem with your stoma, sore skin, leakage, anything like that, go and see your stoma nurse, because there are things that we can try. There's so much available for us to try. So, yeah, definitely call your stoma nurse, because they'll know what you've tried before and also what's currently available.
And you can, I've lost my train of thought, sorry. Oh yeah, you can get into a bit of a vicious circle as well, can't you? With if you've leaked, then your skin gets sore, and then the pouch doesn't want to stick to sore skin.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry, Emma.
Sorry. Yeah, that's right, because any form of leakage sitting on your skin, it's going to cause excoriation. It's going to eat away at that skin. So that then causes, yeah, like you say, sore skin, and then your pouch doesn't want to stick. But, so long as that sore skin isn't weeping or bleeding, then the bag should be able to stick. And if it is weeping and bleeding, there are other things that we can use to help that bag to stick.
Yeah.
So there are things that we can do to stop that cycle from happening. And once we have the right pouch, once a pouch is on for a couple of days, that heals that skin really well once, that leakage has stopped. So it's just a matter of finding the right thing for you.
I have to say, I tried a new bag that was specifically designed for use with a hernia, and it was great for that. And I didn't even think about the rest of it. But actually, having that bag with the Manuka honey in it, when I took the pouch off, I was like, oh wow, my skin underneath is actually so much better than when I put it on. I took it off thinking, oh, I'm scared what this is going to look like. But actually, there's a lot of products now that have those great ingredients right into
added into them that really helps the skin. Yeah
And I think for me the hernia could go up and down throughout the day, so actually I needed something that was going to sort of stretch and grow with my body, and that's what there are products that work like that, aren't there?
The pouch itself actually is shaped so that it will conform to any body profile. So even if you don't necessarily have a parastomal hernia, having a pouch that will mould and contour at every and all body contours and your body profile. It may be a pouch that you need to switch to a pouch like that, even if you don't have parastomal hernia, but that you're experiencing leakages because your body profile has changed.
Our next question is a really simple one, but I think it's one of the most important ones. It says, how do you know if you have a hernia? And I think for both Bob and myself, we've both talked and said, we didn't really know, and then it just didn't feel right. So Emma, can you sort of explain, how do you know if you've got a hernia? What will that look like? What will it feel like?
Yeah, so as well as the bulge, you might get a small bulge or you might get a larger bulge, and sometimes it's hard to see that bulge. Hernias don't really cause many symptoms. It can be barely noticeable, but you might get mild discomfort, you might get a dull ache or a dragging or a heavy sensation. The best thing to do, if you just feel any of those things, or something isn't quite right and you're not sure, go and see your stoma nurse, because she can have a look and say, okay, yeah, I think that's a hernia. Your GP can do the same. And to actually get that formally diagnosed, you'll have a CT scan, which will definitely confirm whether that's a hernia or not.
And this can be anywhere from right after surgery to years later.
Yeah, it can. It can. It mostly happens in the first year, but you know, it can be later on.
So it's just about not being afraid to just reach out and say something doesn't feel
That's
right.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
As a
Pick up
patient,
the phone.
you go, oh, well, I don't want to bother them. What if it's nothing? But it's fine. We can call you up. Not you
Yes,
personally. I'm not going to give your number out, Emma, don't worry.
I'll be inundated.
Just very quickly, because we are coming to the end. I can't believe how quickly this has gone. We sort of discussed before about Bob and I both still have pain, daily pain, even using support garments. Is that right? Should we still be having that difficulty?
Yeah, you might still get pain. I mean, sorry, I'm just going to go around. So there are some complications still that are going to be happening with that stoma. So you can still get a bit of discomfort. You can also go from diarrhea to constipation as well. I don't know if you've both experienced that. So there is also the rare risk of some of that bowel getting trapped and causing strangulation. So if those are the cases and the pain is really bad and you're getting that, it could be a little bit of a partial obstruction, you really need to see your doctor at that point. So that may be where they need to do a hernia repair. Unfortunately, it is you do get some pain every now and again with that hernia. But yeah, go and speak to your GP or your consultant and see what they can do.
Fantastic. I can't tell you how much this has helped me as a patient. Not only, you know, it's great to be able to host this and to talk to you all, but as a patient, I feel like there's so little information and support about hernias. You know, it can feel extremely isolating if you're at home and you know you've recovered from your surgery, you feel like everything should be fine now, and then all of a sudden you've got something that takes you right back to the beginning of that journey of not feeling very well. So I just want to thank you all so much for being involved in this, and if anyone's watching, you know, do speak out. That, like Bob says, there's so many great support groups. Reach out. There are other people who are in exactly the same position as you. Bob and I don't know each other. We live in different parts of the country. We've got different experience. But when we've talked, so many things have lined up where it's like, me too, Bob, me too. And it really helps to feel like I'm not the only one. So thank you all so much for being involved with this today. Any questions that have come through that we haven't answered, we will get on the website. Thank you so much to Bob, Sue, Emma and Joe. If you want to find out more about parastomal hernias, you can go to the Clinimed website, which is www.clinimed.co.uk, and also find them on Twitter and Facebook. And a recording of this will be found on the Clinimed website and the Aura profile product pages. And if you'd like to see Joe's video on exercise, which I highly recommend, that will be over on the Clinimed website as well. Thank you all so much. I hope that everyone's got as much out of this as I have. And yeah, I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.